Hello, and welcome to the Teachers Symposium by the Oxford University Press, by the Professional Development Department. My name is Abdul Haseeb. Let's hope that in the times of this pandemic, this medium suffices for our teaching learning process. And thankfully, due to the medium at least, learning has not been completely disrupted or discontinued. So glad about that. And I'm hoping that the lesson or the session, sorry, would be engaging and engaging, yeah, on the opposite side of the screen. And yeah, of course, we would prefer to have a face-to-face session so that it's interactive and we have open opportunities for participation from our viewers, participants. But I don't think that's meant to be the case. Nonetheless, I'll try to make it as engaging as possible. So, the theme for today is navigating the world, and the session outcomes for today are that we are to foremost try adopting a broader view of history and geography. They are, of course, the key or the core subjects for social studies, at least in our context. Nevertheless, social studies is borrowing a lot from other disciplines, including economics and business management, anthropology, sociology, religion, and perhaps even civics for that matter. Apart from that, we are to think about how we can cluster chapters for bigger ideas and think about having a thematic focus to teaching history and geography. And finally, also trying to think about how we can integrate higher order thinking skills, or perhaps they are already present in the book and we are uh, just an intention or just being attentive or making a mental note of how we can maximize our books in order to inculcate these higher order thinking skills might just be the change we need for social studies. So, the books for today are the World Watch series, World Watch History 123 and World War Geography 123. They are an international publication and by, by a compilation of different authors, history and geography. And I really, really hope I may not have any BBC moment while doing this symposium or the session. But you never know how things can be. They are quite unpredictable. So, history and geography, quite cliched otherwise, and have been running perhaps one of the longest running school subjects. And what do these subjects really, what ideas do they evoke in our mind? Or, okay, so they have a special place in the wider scheme of school education across the globe. That means it's Europe, North America, the UK, or Asia, South Asia, East Asia for that matter, has always been there. Of course, the context means that the subject, the curriculum changes. While there is something permanent about this across continents, there's also a lot of peculiarities of the context which find their way in history and geography. But what exactly is it? Let's go forward. John Dewey, the American philosopher of education, insisted that the function of geography and history is to enrich and liberate the more direct and personal contacts of life by furnishing their context, their background, and their outlook. So, long story short, John Dewey would say, or perhaps this is an interpretation coming from my side, that a student of history and geography should be able to better understand his or her context and have a more refined sense of his or her outlook or the background. This can definitely include the historical, social, economic background. And of course, so history and geography have a big purpose, and that is to help our students develop a certain view of their surrounding. I think just keeping this in mind would change how we teach history and geography in schools. Just having a clear sense of destination, having a clear sense of apex. This is where we have to go, and this is where we need to take our students day in, day out. So if you zoom out of history and geography, this is what history and geography, the trajectory needs to give. And if you zoom in, then every class needs to give that. So I have, for the past few years, I've been using a picture to depict what I mean to say. So, uh, a very fundamental objective of education is to give our students a view of the world, and this comes, I mean, this comes quite close to what geography and history or social studies aim to do, helping our students develop a sense of develop an understanding of their context, developing a sense of the world around them. And history and geography are therefore quite close to the overall purpose of a school education or education in general. I mean, you won't call somebody educated if he or she is unable to understand the world around them and the components that constitute this world. So that is why history and geography are quite integral to the entire educational process, as was said yesterday. I mean, not yesterday, in this last session, have a special place in the wider scheme of education across the globe. So they're quite close to the project itself. And I think that this, as I said, I'll repeat that this itself can be a big game changer for our teachers in history and geography. We need to have a clear sense of destination, and this needs to be communicated to our students. This needs to be clearly, explicitly, implicitly, intelligently disseminated among our students, and should become an active part or an active reference point against which the teacher is measuring his or her uh, learning process or the teaching process as to are my students actually developing that understanding. Coming more, we are zooming down in, I mean, and we'll take a plunge into the books. Over here, I think I should use I think the pen would suffice, I hope. Okay, no. So over here, if you just look at this, and this is just a cursory understanding or a cursory look through the contents of our history book, one of the history books of World Watch History. We have Indus Valley Civilization, we have ancient Egypt, we have ancient China, we have the Aryans, which becomes the Mohenjo-daro or the Indus Civilization. And then we have the Mauryan Gupta empires, we have the religions of the subcontinent, the Greeks, Yunan, Persian, the Persian Empire, Faris, the Roman Empire, the Romeos. So, just looking at that, I mean, talking of that worldview, just looking at this, the contents are giving us a tremendous opportunity for to the teacher to ensure that his or her student or his or her students are developing a cosmopolitan outlook and beginning to understand things across civilizations. They're studying various civilizations and a tremendous opportunity to compare and contrast, finding identifying similarities and differences, identifying continuity and change. There are things in some institutions are still there, some institutions have faded away. Some institutions which are still there are not exactly in the same form, and we have the same institutions across different civilizations. So what we typically do is that we teach Greeks and we teach Persians, or we teach the Persians and we teach Romans, but everything is quite fragmented. If you have that big picture in mind that we have to give our students that worldview, so the content knowledge is being delivered with a different vantage point. But at the same time, within that worldview, what we are doing is that we are giving opportunities to our students to compare and contrast, to analyze, to analyze a civilization. And analyze literally means to break up something into its parts, trying to understand it in isolation, and then bringing it back together to understand how this entire thing is working, or to understand the relationships. That's analysis. Similarly, understanding continuity and change. Things have changed, some things are uh, not changing. And All in all, this is presenting a tremendous opportunity for intellectual growth of our students. Uh, and we, as teachers of history and geography, need to identify it. So, I mean, I think that it would help us if we start thinking of this session in cumulative terms. First and foremost, we need to have a big picture, a big idea, a sense of destination where history and geography is going. And remembering the title of the session, Navigating the World. So we are moving with the curriculum, but within that we are trying to form certain linkages and understanding how these civilizations are coming together or not coming together. Tremendous opportunities for intellectual growth of our students. And of course, that would change the classroom ethos, that would change our questions, that would change our assessment, that would change a lot of things for us. Moving forward, uh, but within that, if you look at the other book of history, World Watch History, within that we also have another very integral function or purpose of social studies or history or geography being delivered. So over here we have the coming of Islam, the spread of Islam, the Abbasid Khilafat, Muslim Spain, Al-Andalus. We have the Crusades and Sabihi Jange, the Mongols, the Ottoman Empire, the subcontinent, and the rise of the Delhi. So if you look at this collectively, then this is a lot about Islam or Islamic history and Islamic heritage, or not Islamic heritage, Muslim heritage. There is a there's a stark difference between Islamic history and Muslim history. So yeah, we need to be cognizant of that difference. So all in all, what is happening over there? There's a cluster over here, a cluster of uh, Islamic belief system, or perhaps the Muslim cultures and Muslim heritage. And if you go forward, and of course, this is Muslim Spain. Uh, One thing very good about World Watch history is that it's touching upon aspects of history which you wouldn't find otherwise in mainstream conventional books. I'll want to close this point that I have begun over here, and it's joined with this one. So after that, in from geography, I'm taking a book. I'm taking something that's related to human settlements. And in human settlements, if you, I'm sorry for the font, but if you pay attention, then we have Karachi over here. So what's happening is that a very key purpose of history and geography is to help develop, remembering John Dewey, helping them develop a sense of their background, their outlook. So history and geography have a purpose for forming of identities. And this is coming quite close to the child's world, talking about Karachi, Pakistan, in the form of human settlements, or talking of the Islamic world or the Muslim world, giving them that sense of heritage. And so, again, thinking of this cumulatively, we have a world view, and then we are coming towards, we are, after the world view, we are trying to think of the clusters, the big picture that history and geography is giving. They're coming quite close to the child's world and gradually narrowing down. But after that, talking of human settlement specifically, the book of geography is going towards, after Karachi, it's going towards Mombasa, a large settlement in Kenya, Africa. And at the same time, it's also going to Naro Moro, a settlement in Kenya, Africa. And the fantastic thing is the assessment over here. If you were to pay attention a bit down, sorry for the font again, we have Mombasa and Naromoro over here, and the assessment requires us to compare Mombasa and Naromoro with the settlement where you live, so that's Karachi. So again, we have an opportunity for critical thinking skills or higher order thinking skills where they're comparing, contrasting, looking for similarities and changes, looking for permanent and the temporary, and a lot of things that we share in common or we don't share in common or how we are different. Uh, so So Mombasa, Narumuru, and Karachi being compared over here. Similarly, we go a bit forward. Here we have climate change, again, helping our students furnish an understanding of their something that is hitting them. So the greenhouse effect coming over here, but the greenhouse effect is broken down, and we have various perspectives coming from these students over here in order to think about it. So the ability to develop your own perspectives on global issues, or having local perspectives, national perspectives on global issues. And of course, the classroom ethos would demand that the teacher should be giving opportunities to students to be sharing his or her perspectives. So the worldview is getting developed. You're giving them opportunities to develop a skill set. You're giving them opportunities to share, so on and so forth. Again, climate change coming home. I'm really, really sorry for the font, but look at the pictures below. For each picture, write a substance to say how something could be changed so that to prevent global warming. So, trying to develop those local understandings about global issues, and I think that is so important for our students to be thinking about, uh, to be thinking in their own personal terms and reflecting how we can change or how we can improve things. Yes, and after that, moving a bit forward, uh, if you look at this cumulatively, then we have history and geography, or navigating the world, is offering us opportunities that our kids can develop their higher order thinking skills. So the questions spiral towards pushing students towards critical thinking, and from following Bloom's taxonomy, remembering, then understanding, then applying, analyzing, evaluating, and eventually creating. So whether that's talking about cities, whether that's talking about climate change, or any other global theme which is affecting us, I think there are tremendous opportunities where just the content is not delivered. Along with the content, the teacher has a certain schedule or skill development in his or her mind, and the skill development straddles along the content delivery, and analyzing, evaluating, and creating. But what's more important and not important, I mean, not equally important and also interesting at the same time, that the series is offering us a technological resource, an e-resource, which is the e-mate. And I'd like to walk you through that with that, and I hope I can share my screen. And just a sec. Uh, I think my screen is getting shared. I'll watch that. Yeah, here we are. So first, talking about same climate change, let's see how World Watch Geography and e-resources helping us understand.
You must have heard about the melting of polar ice caps. Why do you think they are melting? Is it due to climate changes taking place in the world? Let's find out what's causing this change in the climates. The climate of any place is not constant and changes a little with the passage of time. The rise of temperature on Earth, which has been witnessed lately, is called global warming. Scientists collected weather data from weather stations, weather balloons, and weather satellites and observed that 15 of the warmest 16 years happened between 2000 and 2015. You must have heard about the greenhouse effect. Do you know why it is called the greenhouse effect? As we all know, a greenhouse is a glass house made for growing plants in cooler climates. The glass traps the heat of the sun and keeps the air and the ground inside the greenhouse warm for plants to grow. Much the same way, gases like carbon dioxide, methane, ozone and nitrous oxide released into the atmosphere act like the greenhouse glass. They absorb heat from the sun's rays and radiate it in all directions, helping in trapping the sun's warmth on the Earth's surface. This is called the greenhouse effect. Every day, more and more of these greenhouse gases are being released into the air. How is this happening? These gases are mostly coming from human activities such as burning fossil fuels like petrol and diesel in running vehicles and factories. Deforestation is another reason for the increase of greenhouse gases like carbon dioxide. Many scientists think that the dry regions will become even drier and most likely will have droughts, and wet regions will become even wetter and more likely to have floods. Bushfires are more likely when the climate becomes warmer and drier. The amount of fresh water flowing into the oceans has increased. This is partly because global warming is melting the ice around the poles. In wet regions, there has been an increase in rainfall because water from the oceans evaporates more quickly in higher temperatures. The meltdown of the permafrost of the Arctic region gives off carbon dioxide and methane from peat bogs, which are normally frozen. Scientists have found that higher temperatures are causing most glaciers to melt down. The glaciers around Mount Everest are retreating. The frozen water around the North and South poles is called sea ice. Some of this ice melts in the summer, but some ice remains permanently. This permanent ice is the minimum size of the ice cap. In 2012, the permanent ice in the Arctic shrank to its smallest ever area. The frozen glaciers of the world contain about 68% of all fresh water. If all this land ice melts, then sea levels around the world would rise by approximately 70 meters, which would drown some low-lying coastal regions of the Earth.
Yes, so similarly, we have a few more. I wanted to share a few more resources with you, one for history as well. This was related to how, I mean, the key thing over here is how social studies can be made interesting. So we have that big sense. It has to be about worldview. It has to be about helping them develop an understanding of their context, helping them develop those skills. But at the same time, we have these EV resources which can help. We'll have one more from Baghdad.
In the
So this
period between 750 and 1258 CE, during the reign of the Abbasid Caliphate, Islamic civilization saw its golden era, with Baghdad as its crown jewel. The city of Baghdad was founded near the old Persian capital of Ctesiphon, and as it grew in trade and riches, it also reaped the benefits of foreign cultures flowing through it. The Abbasids strongly encouraged this, and as a result, Baghdad soon turned into a thriving hub of learning and culture. The city's House of Wisdom was at the center of this intellectual renaissance. Established primarily as a private library for Harun al Rashid, it grew under Mamun's reign into an institute of sciences and humanities. Mamun initiated a new era of scholarship, inviting scholars from other countries to Baghdad to study and discuss subjects ranging from theology to medicine to music and astronomy. A highly accomplished scholar himself, he made it a mission to collect books and scrolls from all corners of the world. It was common to see camels laden with books going towards Baghdad. In a short span of time, Mamun consolidated all of these works into a very impressive collection. One of the many books written in this period was the fascinating Book of Ingenious Devices, which described a number of automated machines with illustrations such as this one. This diagram shows a hydro-powered perpetual flute designed to keep playing itself through the use of water power. Another book, titled The Book of Animals, was an encyclopedia of different animals with many colorful illustrations. The most important contributions from this era, however, are the works of Al-Khwarizmi, the father of algebra, Ibn Sina, the father of modern medicine, and the famous polymath Al-Biruni. Few people would know that 500 years before Columbus landed on the New World, Al-Biruni had already discovered it using his highly advanced geographical knowledge and mapping skills. Not all of these scholars came from Baghdad, but the House of Wisdom did serve as the center of research and scholarly exchange for all of them. While the scholars of the House of Wisdom produced original works, they also translated vast amounts of ancient Greek texts Their efforts later helped in ushering in the Renaissance in Europe when people studied their works and translated them.
Fair enough. And over here we have one more opportunity um, with the with the e-resources, the opportunity for uh, some embedded assessment pieces. I'd like to show you an assessment piece. Uh, uh, Let me just pull back. Where is it? So in one assessment piece, which suffice and how these e-resources can come in handy for our students and for our teachers. So an assessment related to Indus Valley civilization, start assessment, the cities of, okay, save and next, save and next, finish test. It's perhaps easy bringing back some interest and reviving some interest among our students. I want to go for a new share and come back on my original slideshow. Um, so the key learnings for today are that history and geography have much more to offer if we take a thematic approach, that big picture approach, big ideas, and then organizing our organizing our course accordingly. After that, we need to have better assessment questions, and these are not assessment questions just like a discrete block at the end of a session, but also embedded along the lesson plan. And that will help us navigate the teaching learning process, which will help our students develop those higher order thinking skills. And finally, integrating AV resources can also enhance student learning. With that, I'm hoping that you really had something to learn, something to implement in your classrooms. And I know I enjoyed the session, of course, and I hope people on the opposite side of the screen also enjoyed the session. So thank you very much, and I wish you all the best. And looking forward to your questions or comments.